Today I'm telling the story of a mysterious folk singer and songwriter that was rumored to be dead and became a legend outside of his home country. He was more recently brought into the spotlight due to the documentary Searching for Sugar Man and is highly regarded for his two classic albums. Join me to learn about the history of Rodriguez. Sixto Rodriguez, named for being the sixth child to his Native American mother and Mexican father, was born on June 10, 1942, in Detroit, Michigan. His family knew the value of hard work, and growing up in the poor neighborhoods of Detroit gave him the inspiration for his blunt songs about the harsh realities faced by the inner city poor. His first single, I'll Slip Away, was released in 1967 on a small label that didn't sell very many copies of it, and eventually the company itself went out of business. That company has suggested that he go by the name Rodriguez, but all future releases would be under the name Rodriguez. In 1968, producers Dennis Coffey and Mike Theodore went to see Rodriguez perform, where they said he had his back turned to the audience in the smoky bar. Thinking that Rodriguez's songwriting was second only to Bob Dylan, these producers decided that they needed to do an album with this guy. The debut full-length album, Cold Fact, was released in the US in March of 1970 on the Sussex label. Two of the songs, Hate Street Dialogue and Gomorrah, a Nursery Rhyme, were written by the two producers plus Gary Harvey, while the other 10 songs are original compositions by Rodriguez. He uses two different names for his songwriting credits. 6 are under his brother's name, Jesus, and 4 are under Sixth Prince. The album starts with what is likely his most well-known song, Sugar Man, where he sings about being in the position in which he feels he needs his sugar man to deliver color to his world. This is a terrific piece of psychedelic folk, driven by bass, light percussion, Rodriguez's guitar, and his voice. Several orchestral instruments, as well as some kind of psychedelic sound, seem to come in and out of this song, and eventually kind of accumulate into a crazy psychedelic breakdown. This psychedelia is originally what caught my ear, but I think what truly immortalized Rodriguez are the lyrics on this album. They are often a blunt look at reality, as clearly seen on the song This Is Not a Song, It's an Outburst, or the Establishment Blues, which basically has a bunch of quick one-liners, starting with, the mayor hides the crime rate, councilwoman hesitates, the public gets irate, but forgets the vote date. Then, of course, there's the breakup song with a chorus that's something like this. But thanks for your time, then you can thank me for mine. After that's said, forget it. Musically, the album goes on to contain short and relaxing, but mostly upbeat folk rock songs, typically with Rodriguez's acoustic guitar and voice, a bass, and simplistic percussion, often accompanied sporadically by another lead-type instrument like a violin, electric guitar, or organ. Of course, you can't talk about this album without mentioning the incredibly catchy song I Wonder, and the bass on it is really fun, keeps the song super interesting, keeps coming back to a little lick that goes a little bit like this. Unfortunately, the album didn't sell very well at all, and Rodriguez went to London for a month in mid to late 1970, where he spent 3 weeks recording his second album with producer Steve Rowland. Coming From Reality was released in November of 1971. This time, all of the songs are written by Rodriguez, but the style strays a bit from the previous album. This time, the song lengths average at over 4 minutes, and Rodriguez leans a little bit more into singing some love songs. Climb Up On My Music kicks the album off with a psychedelic rock jam that is packed full of guitar and keyboard solos. But of course, the real standouts are the fantastic folk songs. A Most Disgusting Song is a bit of a honky-tonk, with Rodriguez's commentary about the types of people he repeatedly sees playing bar gigs. I Think of You is a love song with strings and classical guitar, and Sandrevan Lullaby is a guitar and orchestral introduction to Lifestyles, another harsh observation of life in America. The last standout track I want to mention is Cause, which is like a series of bad events, starting with losing his job 2 weeks before Christmas. Ironically, when the album didn't sell, the record company dropped him from the label a couple weeks before Christmas. Though Rodriguez had recorded a few more songs, including a new version of his 1967 single, a new album was never finished, and he went back to working in demolition and construction. The next bit of history can be kind of confusing, so I did my best to research every bit of it and then just bring you guys the concrete cold facts. So if you appreciate all of my research that I did for this video, please just give me a like and consider subscribing. Thank you very, very, very much. Throughout the 70s, albums by Rodriguez were re-released in South Africa and Australia, and we also know that 400 original copies of Cold Fact had made their way to Australia. We also know there are many different stories about the source of the wild spread of bootlegs throughout these places, as well as countries like Botswana, Zimbabwe, and New Zealand. In 1976, thousands of copies of Cold Fact were found in a warehouse in New York City and were shipped over to Australia, where they sold out rather quickly. So an Australian record label decided to take advantage of this. They got the rights to the music and re-released both albums. And they also put together a compilation called At His Best, which included the 3 songs that he had recorded but never released. Because of all this, Rodriguez temporarily returned to music and did tours of Australia in 1979 and 1981. For more complete details on the next part of the story, I highly recommend checking out the documentary Searching for Sugar Man. But to sum up, there were rumors in South Africa about several different ways that Rodriguez supposedly killed himself on stage. Due to the fact that his album sleeves barely showed his face, made his name kind of confusing, and didn't tell you the other players on the album, no one really knew who he was or how to find out the real story about his death. Eventually in the 90s, a website was created which compiled all information about Rodriguez with the mission of finding out much more, as well as preserving his legacy. All the while, Rodriguez continued to work his days away in Detroit, unaware that he was bigger than Elvis in South Africa. However, in 1997, one of his 3 daughters would find the website and left a comment saying, "Hey, that's my dad." And after a lot of work, this would lead to Rodriguez going to South Africa to play several sold-out concerts. Since then, it seems Rodriguez has retired from hard labor, and he has backing bands all around the world for whenever he wants to go on a tour in different regions. He has also discussed the desire to create a 3rd album, but so far we have not heard anything from this. If this is your first time hearing of Rodriguez, I mostly recommend the first album, and with all of my videos, I leave links in the description below with some suggested spots to start listening. If you guys enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you can just give me a like down below. I make little mini docs like this on a weekly basis, and I'd really appreciate it if you would consider subscribing for more, and have a happy listening session.